So how do you speed up the approval process of taking a piece of raw land and getting it approved for development, right? Because if you're gonna pay development values for the land, you got to make sure you get it approved for development before you close. That's 101, and I talk about it all the time. You never pay development values for land until the development's approved. If you're gonna pay for a diamond, you got to make sure it's a diamond, and it's not a diamond until it's approved. Okay, enough of that. How do you speed up that approval process? One, I'm gonna give you two tips. One, make sure you're hiring the best consultants. I've hired consultants that weren't the best, that maybe were the cheapest earlier in my years, in my career, and it was a nightmare, okay? The jurisdictions demolished their plans. They fumbled all over themselves. They kept creating land use applications that were incomplete. Is hire the best of the best, in my opinion. Two, make sure those consultants have an existing relationship with that jurisdiction so that they already know what's important to them. They know what's not important to them. They know how to treat them. They know what they look for, what they don't look for. And that relationship, that existing relationship is extremely, extremely valuable. Most important tip I have for you is treat your jurisdictions as your partners, not as your enemies. They're not the bad guys. They're your partners in the projects. You need to put together win-win relationships with your jurisdictions, just like you do with your property owners, okay? When you're cold calling a property owner and trying to get them to sell, one thing I talk about all the time is figuring out that property owner's hot buttons, what's important to them, so that you can put together a win-win deal. You can hit their hot buttons, but then there's other areas of the transaction or in the negotiation, the structure of the deal, where you win, to where overall you can have a successful project that you can get across the finish line. It is no different with your jurisdictions, okay? Figure out what's important to them and hit their hot buttons, okay? And then you can win in other areas of the structure to where overall you have a successful project, and you're gonna get the project across the finish line much quicker if you hit that jurisdiction's hot buttons. Mark my words on this, and I can speak through personal experience. I'll go as far as, if you don't figure out what's important to that jurisdiction, even if it's illegal. There's been times and situations where it wasn't even legal what they wanted from me. It wasn't in their code. It was not legal what they wanted from me, okay? But instead of me fighting them legally on what the law was, I went ahead and just did it anyways, because it was a super important thing to them. It was a hot button of theirs, so I did it, okay? You know why? It got my project across the finish line, because here's the reality. Whether legal or not, that jurisdiction was going to deny my project if I didn't do what they were asking for. And I did it. You know why? Because I still had a successful project. I was still able to get it across the finish line. And that was the difference between a denial and an approval. Now, don't get me wrong, I would have appealed the denial, and I would have taken it all the way up in the court system, and I would have won, because what they wanted was not legal. But that's not the point. Who cares? Just get the project. If it works, if you can do it and the project still works, get it done. Get your pride out of the way. Get the ego out of the way, okay? Speed is extremely valuable. I would argue speed is one of the most valuable things a company can have, right? As far as a virtue, as far as a principle. Speed is so important. So get your pride out of the way, get your ego out of the way, and create a successful project and get it across the finish line as quick as possible. All right, see ya.